All right, good afternoon. My name is SCUser10. Welcome back to today's um, YouTube session. Today's video session is about Hyper-V. So back uh, yesterday, we talked about how to create a Hyper-V, um, create a virtual machine using Azure IaaS with and without a credit card. So if you missed that class, I have that class recorded. We talked about user address books attributes. If we select a country in the GUI and the ADUC, we can assign values to the CO, and to the CO country code attributes. Here's a link that I'm going to post within that video so that you guys are able to take a look at that. And these would be the two commands that I've created. These are some PowerShell commands that I can use within PowerShell to create the the CO, and the country code. Now, quick question people asked, probably we're going to ask is what's the 124 and what's the 840? There is an ISO.org group that uses an Alpha 2. They're an online browsing platform. They're ISO related. Within that, you should be able to, sort of like what I did, gather all the Alpha 2 codes and all the Alpha 3 codes and the numeric codes. So if you're looking for that, I think I've already posted that, but these are the country codes that you're going to use for that, and you guys should be able to use that when you're adding in that information to your Active Directory infrastructure. So if we were to go back to our domain here and open our virtual machine, I open uh, my virtual machine, right? Within this virtual machine, I log into, let's say, user 9, who's in Boston right now, um, the Boston data center. If I right click on that, who's the HR director of the company, if I go to the properties there, and I go to attribute editor. If you don't have attribute editor, let's talk about that first. Just again, I may have forgotten that, but just in case you guys want to know how to get to attribute editor, in the view options, you want to click on advanced features, view, and then click on the advanced features, and that should give you the extra drop down list. And another option I want you guys to use is the filter option. You want to display over 2000. Sometimes you have in a data center, you have over 2,500 users, or 3,000 users, or 5,000 users. You just want to move that to 999. That's my trick. I usually do that, and just hit OK, and that should save that. So if I go to the let's say the U.S. data center, the United States data center, and within the New York, I have, let's say, Marion user 9, or Boston, we have user 9. Let's say, for example, who's the HR director. We can now right click and or double click, right? And that should help us with the attribute editor column. So within that attribute editor column, we have our C, right? And that's our C is our country code. And again, our website, the website that I posted, should be in the description of last video. And then we have our CO, which is our country operator, and that's the United States. And then we should also have our country code. Now, to edit the country code, we know that through ISO.org, Alpha 2, our numeric code for US is, I believe, 840. So we need to make sure that we change that and put that in. And I'll show you guys how to do that. So if we enter the country code and we enter 840, then hit OK, and then apply. That should be the correct information, especially when you're querying you know laptops and PCs in a different country with the canonical names SCUser10. There's some other attributes here. I'll also give you guys some information on that, and what these attributes do and how these attributes work for you. Um, Again, you can filter these optionals to to show only writable attributes, and we can filter them to show only attributes that have values. So these are all our attributes that have values, and this is what's going to be synchronized. So these are the synchronized ones that we want. Um, you know, and all this stuff here is there. So if you do want to take a look at those security um, attributes, okay. So if you want to take a look at the attributes and the ACLs for this and the permissions and stuff, I did send you guys a link, and that'll have all the attribute field information. But for now, let's just leave it at that and go on to our next topic, which is our um, Hyper-V. Okay, so first we're going to create a new virtual machine, and let me kind of design what I want to do first. So our main concern, so within our on-premises domain, our data center, our Canada data center, on-premises branch in our country, or your US or the Canada, we have our on-premises domain, right? And then within that, I'm going to create a bare metal machine. So this is our bare metal machine. And then that bare metal machine, um, I'm going to give it a network card, or NIC card, right? And that'll be our physical NIC card with Ethernet 0, and that's going to transfer the inbound and outbound data. And then I also have within there, I also have a physical disk, or hard disk. Enter. Oh, let's say hard drive. Or I'll just go to my other picture here and I'll grab these pictures. Okay, um, so here's our physical disk, right? Let's make this a little bit bigger so that we can draw it out some more. Okay, so we have our physical disk here, all right? And then that's going to be our bare metal machine, and we're going to install our operating system. So I want to show you guys, I can install any operating system I want, right? And then again, on top of that, do this. Here you go. We're going to layer this out. There you go. There you go. Let's use this for now. Okay. Remove this. Take that out of the way. So I'll build this. This is sort of going to act as our barrier, and I'll explain to you. It's going to be our OS, so our bare metal machine. So add some text. So this is our bare metal machine. Bare metal machine. And again, this bare metal machine, Could be anything that you want it to be. It's just a bare metal machine with a hard drive, a physical hard drive, and a physical network card. And then we're gonna install our hypervisor on top of the operating system, right? Like that here for you guys. Got a better understanding of how that works, and then so you have a better understanding of how that works, right? So that's our operating system. Okay. And then I'll copy this, and this will be our visor. Right. And then that'll be, and on top of the hypervisor, we're going to install Hyper-V or V-Roll, Hyper-V Manager. And then on top of that, OS, and this is going to be our OS. So let's go like that. Close that. And then on top of that, just so you guys have a better understanding, on top of that, we're going to build our machines, build our virtual machines. And this is all within the bare metal. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, give it some bigger pixelations. Yeah. So that's going to be our basic infrastructure. The operating system, I can use 2012 or 2016. Doesn't matter. Okay, so looking back at our operating system, I want to use, let's say we can use we'll use let's see what we can use. I can use 2016 or 2012. So I'll use 2000, let's say 2012 right now. Which is a good example. I know we're, discontinuing since last year. We discontinued 2012. Actually, you know what? Let's use 2012. To try to install those features. It's the same thing. So we'll go ahead and install 2012 for now, and I'll go ahead and copy these two. Actually, we'll do this. We'll create okay, so when we'll create it, I'll mount it. I'll map that network drive to that folder. So we'll use 2012 or 2006. It doesn't matter. We can use 2012 just to test it out, just to show you some of the errors that you might receive. So that'll kind of be a little bit of a training extra bonus session. If you guys never used 2012, it's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go ahead and create this new bare metal machine. um, with an operating system, but I want to, create the hard drive, and I think I'm going to give it two hard drives. Um, I want to give it two hard disks. So this is going to have two hard disks, and we'll create a mirrored configuration again, like I showed you guys before. If in case you missed it, I'm going to show you guys in this session. Then we will create a NIC, and I'll give it a secondary NIC for testing purposes, for NIC teaming. So I'll also explain to you what that does and what NIC teaming is, because it is important when creating these machines. Okay, so let's put operating system name here. All right. Well, I'll give it make this a little bit smaller here so that we can fit that in. You fit that in. And we'll have just to have as that machine, we the company, the local branch company, you know, uh, the company itself, and then we'll have uh, our admin here, and our admin will have a laptop. Copy, and we'll give our admin a laptop. Okay. And we're using our software, um, Hyper-V. So we're using Hyper-V, and we'll bring that to the front. So that's bring forward, bring front. There we go. So our admin here, that's our admin. All right. Okay. And we will um, design that. All right. So this is our architecture. Architecture. Okay. And we'll give it a bigger heading, and I'll give it a red color. Okay. Okay. Architecture. And we will give it uh, heading style. Spelled that wrong. Take that off there. Okay. All right. That's my architecture. Right, and then obviously we have our cloud, or we call it our internet or our cloud. That's going to be our internet or our cloud. Um, you know, if in case we want to do a live synchronize those machines, or to the cloud, or just we can use that as our internet call out. Okay, so we have our NIC cards. We have our bare metal machine. It's an empty machine. Our goal is to, I've installed the hard drives, my hard disks that both run. They're both SSD hard disks that have NTFS volumes. And I have my NIC cards, my NIC card zero, my NIC, and I'll show you guys how I create that again on Hyper-V. So I have my laptop and me as the admin. So I'm actually logged in through our Hyper-V program, and I'm going to build this one machine for troubleshooting, how to create a virtual machine within our hypervisor, which is our Hyper-V manager, and then build our machines on top of that. Once we have that information, um, you know, me the admin, I'll be logging into that admin, right? I'll be logging into that from my Workstation Pro machine software on my laptop, and I'll be creating this virtual machine with operating system, and I'll create. Let's see. Um, so I will create an operating system, and let's use 2012, so that we can 2012. It's been a while since I've used it. Yeah. So our goal again is to create this bare metal machine with 2 disks, 2 NIC cards, with an operating system, and then we're going to install the role, hypervisor role, um, Hyper-V manager role, and then do the setup, and then create a virtual or build our virtual VM, and me as the admin logging into a laptop. So this is all going to happen today in this video. Okay. So I've opened up my Workstation Pro, and I'm creating a typical workstation virtual machine. I don't want to install the operating system later. I'll install that later and I'll show you what to do. I am using my guest operating system, and like we mentioned in the picture, we're going to be using Windows 2012 or 2016. So I'm going to choose 2012, right? And then I'm going to click next. So this is going to host our Hyper-V machine, this server, and I'm going to click next. And then I'm going to call this Windows 2012 server, 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 and we're going to call this Canada DC, Canada DC. And I will select the location as to where I want to install it. And I will create a new folder, and I'll call this Hyper-V 2024 September, the year and the month, and I'll date it the 19th. Okay, and then I'll make sure I'll just select that and then click OK. So I want to install my virtual machine within there, so I'll change my location, and I'll install it into um, in Hyper-V folder, and I'll move that. I think I want to move that here. Okay. Okay. Roll that out. We'll go back to our servers, virtual machines, and we will look for our Hyper-V machine. So that's going to be an INC2 servers. So I will minimize that, INC2 servers, and it should be here. Where did it go? Looks like it didn't create it. So let's create it again. No problem. Maybe I didn't create that properly. It's okay. So we will browse. We'll go to F. We will go to servers. Again, you can create this on your C drive, and then you can go to documents. You can go to your user profile and create this virtual machine right here. Paste, right? You can create a new machine within that and call that that. In my case, I will be creating. In my case, I will be creating it in my drive, and I will be creating it in here, and I will create a new folder called Hyper-V, today's date, hit enter, and then I will select that folder and then hit OK. So I found the location, and I am going to give it a disk here, one disk for now. I'm just going to give it 150 GB, and I split that into one single file. Hit OK. So the recommended size for virtual 12 is 60 GB. Doesn't matter. You can put as much as you want. And again, usually by what I would normally do is split the virtual disk into multiple files. And by splitting that, it makes it easier to move the virtual machine to another computer. Although it just may reduce the performance with very large disks. So it's just best practice to sometimes split the virtual disk into multiple disks. And those disks are, and I'll show you the sizes of those disks. So when you're migrating them over, or when you're copying or backing them up, it's a little less time consuming instead of actually physically doing one full disk in gigabytes and even terabytes. Okay. So again, it's up to you. It's personal preference, but I do recommend splitting a virtual machine into multiple files. I'm just going to create that for now. And I'm going to add that second NIC based on the drawing. So I'm going to create the new virtual disk. Sorry, an extra network adapter first, and then click finish. And then I'm going to add a hard drive as well too, if I can get that hard drive there added. Where is it? Not there. Okay, so let's just leave it like that for now. And then go ahead and give it, we'll give this one 8 GB, or whatever you want, 16 or 8, that doesn't really matter, or even 10. So we'll show you how to find out the megabytes for that. So 1 gigabyte is equal to 1024 megabytes, right? So if I want 8 gigabytes, I multiply by 8 gigabytes, and that'll give me the total memory for that machine. So if we click on that 8, it'll give us the 8192. Now, because I'm creating virtual machines, I do want a little bit more. I can push it up to maybe 12 or maybe 16. But in this instance, because I have a lot of memory, I'll give it 16. You don't have to give it 16. You can give it as much as you want. This is only for testing purposes. And, this is what we're going to be introducing. So I'm going to close that, right? I've added a hard disk already, and I could give it an extra hard disk once it's created. So once I've created that machine, I'll show you guys how to add an extra hard disk. So I'm going to close this for now, and I'm going to finish it off as is, and then show you guys how to install this operating system and add a network drive. So our machine is created. We have our hard disk. I want to add another hard disk based on the drawing. So we've gone ahead and added that first grab my pen here. So I've gone ahead and added that so far, added these two, right? And I've created my bare metal machine, right? I've created my bare metal machine. I've given it, not given it software yet, but I am going to add another hard drive, and I'll give that another 150. And I'm gonna show you guys how to. If you didn't watch it in my other video, I also have it. I'll create a RAID configuration, RAID 1 configuration with mirror. I'll show you guys how to do that. And then I will, once I've installed that, I'll go ahead and install the hypervisor. Okay. So while we're doing that, I just want to create a bare metal machine for now, and then kind of give you a little bit of an introduction on some networking, because I think it is important, especially when we're talking about virtual machines and how the architecture of virtual machines works. Okay. So going back to our notes here, we are just gonna go back to hypervisor products again, and I know we were talking about thin provisioning and thick provisioning, because I also think that's important. That's going to be our next topic, but we are going to go back and finish the machine because I want to add the hard drive first. Let's go ahead and add that extra NIC card. I mean the extra hard disk. So click next, and then we want to add a hard disk, and we're going to click next, and we're going to create that new virtual disk machine, and we're going to give it 150. Okay. And we're going to split that virtual disk. We're not going to allocate it, because allocating the full capacity can enhance performance, which is not sort of what we don't want, especially with all the physical disk space that I have available right now. If I don't want to allocate it, all that space right now, our virtual disk size starts small and it continues to grow as it had. And I'll show you guys when we talk about the VMX file, because the more data you add to it, the bigger the file sizes go. And you'll see that in the file. I'll show you where the file location is once I finish this. All right, and we're just going to name it as is, as a VDMK file, and we're going to click finish. So I've gone ahead and created those two disks. I've gone ahead and given it two not adapters. I do want to, you know, give it its own virtual machine on its own virtual network, because I do want to add my own private IPs. So we aren't going to share the host IPs. We're just going to give it our favorite. Doesn't matter what you give it, but we can give it VMware 9 for now, VMnet 9 for no particular reason. And that's going to be our network. So the more computers we add onto this, they're all going to be part of that same network. I'm going to hit OK. Right? And that'll give us our network. And then we can give it its static IP addressing after when we're ready to go. So that machine is ready to go. This is going to be our hypervisor Canadian data center machine. It's going to hold our hypervisor, Hyper-V Manager, Hypervisor OS, and on a Windows 12 server. So that bare metal machine is now created. And I will show you where the location is. So if I go to the settings, where that VMX file is, and I click on options, our working directory, it takes us to our working directory. And then within our working directory, I should be able to browse for that folder or run that folder. Just copy that and then go to run Windows R, and then right click and hit enter. Should be 19, today's date. And again, as you can see, all these VDMK files, this S0023 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are all small little files that virtual disk file that are created, and they create into small little bits. So as the more data grows, as more data is added, the size of it grows. Um, right. So, and then this is our virtual machine um, machine configuration file. So any information here would, any changes that we would need to make, we can go ahead and make those changes here. Uh, right. So again, custom virtual network, which is our virtual VMnet, has 19 different networks. Our custom network separates independent networks and the machine, so it separates the independent networks and the machines inside so that we can communicate with each other. But does not communicate outside of this network. So this is where our virtual network and our VLANs come in. So this is sort of like a VLAN, but it does not communicate outside of this network with any other networks, and it segregates the management of our LANs, our local area networks. We don't want to use host only, lagged segment, or bridged, or NAT protocol. We can again in that protocol, we do have a NAT protocol, which is a network address translation. It's basically what that is behind it. You're not exposed to a home network. So if we are into that, we're obviously not going to be exposed to a home network. And it gets the IP from the DHCP that's sitting from and inside the virtual machine, virtual VMware workstation. It also grabs internet from my physical network and gives internet connection, and it's used to share the host IP. And I can give it an internet connection with the help of the protocol NAT to about 10,000 private IPs, right? Base VMs. I think we already talked about the three private IP ranges. It's the 10.0.0.0, 172.16, and then 192.168.0.0, and these are non-routable. Um, this is RAID. We'll talk about that one in a moment later on. So let's go back to our um, thin provisioning and provisioning, and then we'll go ahead and install. So what we just talked about was in virtual machine VMware, they use something called thin provisioning, which is sort of different from what Hyper-V uses. Hyper-V uses something called dynamic expanding or automatic expanding. That's the software is being installed, which occupies the physical space on the physical disk. So it only the software being installed occupies the physical space on the physical disk, and that's what thin provisioning is. Whereas thick provisioning in VMware versus dynamic expanding, Microsoft, it just occupies, which is also called dynamic expanding in Microsoft Hyper-V. It occupies all the space mentioned on that page. So just so you guys have an idea of what that means, um, when 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 we were creating that virtual machine. So share files. Um, I want to always enable it, and I want to map that in my C drive when I load the machine, and I want to add um, that application folder here, and I want to add, let's just add that. Let's just add that for now. The whole thing doesn't really matter. And then I'll enable that share, and then whenever I'm done with it, I can disable it and you know disable it, or I can always enable it, which is always on. So each time I um, shut the machine off or log off for the day, then it'll always be on. I won't have to reload it each time. If I want to rename it to something else, I can rename it to something else. I can give it a name as file share, right? FS file share server, server for Canada. Data center. And then hit OK. Hit OK. So you'll notice once I power on the machine and I load the operating system after I log in for the first time, you should be able to see that. And then once we're done with that, I'm going to show you guys how to use the auto login, which is also a new feature that you're going to get an error. So there's no CD-ROM. So, and then we'll install VMware tools and give it the name that we want it to give it based on the architecture nomenclature that we want. Right now, it's just a bare metal machine with the hardware on it. Me as the admin, I'm going to log into, I'm logged into the virtual, and I'm logging into, so right now I'm going like this, and then from here, I'm accessing the software, and I'm configuring my hardware as we speak, and then we'll go ahead and install the operating system, and then we'll install the role, and then we'll build. Those are the 4 steps that we're going to use to create, and I'll sort of split them into halves or do as much as we can today, and then I'll continue later on, and I'll create another video for that. So this is sort of how you create a virtual machine using the Hyper-V format. It's a little bit more, but I want you guys to kind of understand the concept and become pros at it. So over here, I want to give it 2 processors. I also want to give it 2 processors and hit OK. I'll save the state. Okay. Okay, so while that's waiting, we'll go back here and we'll talk about the information here that's important. So any information, guys, again, like I noted, like I stated, um, uh, like I stated here, um, part of the learn.microsoft.com training modules. So if you guys want to take a look at this later, this will kind of show you how to create and configure VMs and explain what all the information is and whatnot. So this will sort of be like a good read. We'll also talk about, you know, second generation hardware versus, you know, management and versus generation 1 and what hardware is included in the generation 1 by default versus generation 2 and the following hardware that's there by default. Okay. In generation 2, it does share the same generation as VM1. So if we're looking at the processor generation for generation 1, you can allocate the processor resources to a VM, and you can allocate up to 64 virtual processors to a single virtual machine. And then our BIOS here, our virtual hardware for that VM, uh, you know, uh, we're using that Hyper-V is our hypervisor, which uses this virtual hardware to mediate access to actual hardware. So depending on the scenario, you might not need to use all the available simulated hardware, but again, you're more than welcome to take a look at this and read this as uh, as you look through the documentation. Okay, I'll post this in our YouTube video at the end of the session. And I'll have a link posted to that so you can kind of look into that and read as I am going along and follow along. So there are some main steps and processes when you're creating a Hyper-V. These are the steps, so you can kind of take a look at that and whatnot. Our next thing is how to install a Hyper-V role. So this is how I'm going to install a Hyper-V role by using Server Manager. I'll show you guys how to do that. It's pretty straightforward. Or we can also install it by using the feature. So it's up to you what you want. So follow these instructions. This will have all the instructions for you. We can copy and paste that and follow along and add that to our notes as we move forward. Okay. So this will have all the information for you. So again, I'll have this posted in case you want to use that and follow along. But we're going to actually create one live, so you'll have an idea of what it looks like. Then we also Hyper-V using PowerShell, so we can use either or. It doesn't matter what you want to use, or you can enable Hyper-V with Command or DISM, and that's how you configure the Windows and Windows images. Among its many applications, DISM can enable the features while the operating system is running. So you can use the DISM command while the operating system is running, right? And follow the instructions on how to do that. We can enable the Hyper-V roll through settings. That's also another option. That's a common option for Windows 10 and 11 users. We can turn on the feature, but one word of advice, this feature is only enabled when the role is enabled on the server or the role is added to the Windows 10 or Windows 11 device. So if you're not adding that Windows 10 or 11 device, you need to install it, and then that's when you can use the DISM or the Windows optional feature. And if I have some time, I'll show you guys how to do this part here. I'll add that to our notes. Copy this, which is also important. I might have to show you guys how to do that in a later video. Like that. I'll post that in our notes here. Okay. So that's a future topic. Again, you know, oh, there's our machine. So let's go back to our machine. Obviously, the machine's been shut down. So the machine is shut down. We'll just power it off. Shut down the guest machine. We're not going to really power off the machine yet. You don't really want to do that. And I'll explain to you why you don't want to do that. It is an option. You never want it. You always want to power off. Best practice is to power off the machine from the machine itself. So you don't really want to. Your main bet is to use the shut, like in our machines itself. We can use shut down the server from the start of the shutdown menu over here. That's one option we can use, right? And then shut it down. Or in PowerShell, we can use the stop power. You don't really want to use this power off, because that'll power off the whole machine. You want to shut down the guest first, right? Or suspend the guest and then power off the machine. So you never want to use this power off. You always want to use shut down the guest first or suspend the guest. Okay. Let's add a CD DVD. So I will add our CD DVD, and that's located in my applications server, and I have my Windows 12 ISO, and I hit OK. So like I mentioned before shut it off, you need to click in the machine itself, the black part of the machine. Once you've clicked in, you should be able to see add any key, and at that point you need to add any key. So if you do miss it, then it'll bring you to your BIOS menu, and I'll show you how to do that. There's two ways of doing it. So you can even power on the machine, ignore this message, right? Or, oh, I guess not. So I'll shut off and I'll restart it again. Just ignore it. Oh, I think you're supposed to press F12. Okay, so we'll press F12. I think that's right. You need to press F12. So we're going to restart the guest machine. and we're gonna click into it and hit a 12, right? And oh, that's for Pixie boot. Oops, we're gonna hit F2. And then hit Control Alt to exit, and then reboot it again. So that's two options. So I'm going to restart the guest machine, click in, and then hit F2. Oh, gotta do this quick. Control Alt, right click, power, restart the guest. Okay. Click F2 to set into the setup. So this is our BIOS. This is where our BIOS is. I can go ahead and make changes to that and add different information to the BIOS itself. So this one has I can add a password on boot. I can add hardware. I can do whatever I want with this machine, which is a cool option, as you can see. And the reason why, and then do a Control to get out. The reason why you're getting it is because our bare metal machine uses SCSI disks. So again, when we're adding our machines, usually our NVE, our non-volatile memory disks are better, right? Or SATA disks are better, but IDE disks can be added only while the VM is powered off, and NVE disks can be added only while the VM is powered on. So our recommendation pulled us towards the SCSI disk. Usually it creates it with an NVMe disk, but again, it doesn't really matter. Just to know what type of disks you have and the infrastructure around it. But I should be able to boot into the uh, BIOS as is, and I'll show you guys how to do that again, just in case you missed it. So I'm going to click in, so I'm in the machine, and then move my mouse around, and then down, right? Because I don't have a mouse, right? So I have to use my keyboard. Just make sure you have your keyboard enabled. And I'm going to discard changes. And then I'm going to hit enter. Oh, I'm going to exit discarding changes. And then hit enter. And then press F12 again. Click into there. Oh, and then Control Alt. You got to do this quickly, guys. So, and then restart the guest. Once I restart the guest, I hit F12. Tend to the setup. Do that again. Control Alt. Just quickly. Power. Restart the guest. Again, right click, power, restart the guest. Okay, there we go. So once I'm in here, I can make changes to the boot menu, on the primary master slave configuration. I can make changes to the cache memory, to the chipset control, to whatever security. I can give it a BIOS password if I want. I can set that up to boot, or I can boot from my network cards, or I can make it boot to my hard drive or CD-ROM or removable drives based on what I want it to boot. So I can use the up arrow keys to change values, to change those values, plus and minus keys, which is the up and down arrow or the plus and minus key. So the plus and minus key on the keyboard should be able to move up and down, or you can select the item and then select the menu for that item, or select the menu items, which is at the top. And then you want to hit F1. That'll bring you to the help. Hit continue. That'll give you some more information. Or if you want to hit exit, just hit exit, escape, and then, or press F10 to save and exit the changes. We didn't make any changes, so we are going to discard the changes and then load the previous configuration and then exit discarding changes. So that's loading now. Now once that loads, that'll load our Windows 12 operating system. We're going to change our time and currency format. So English Canada, our time in Canada. So if we're in the States, we put it in the States. Okay. In this case, we're in our Canadian data center, so we're going to leave that as is. Our English is US, United States, and our keyboard input is next, is US, and then we're just going to click next. We're not going to repair the computer because there's no data on this computer, so we're just going to install that now. We will be using our installation data center or standard evaluation with the GUI installed, which is a recommended, or server with data center evaluation with GUI, since we're installing a data center in this case, or we could just use a standard. Doesn't matter. Architecture 64-bit, so we're going to stick to that. And then click next. And that'll be our GUI. Accept the license terms. And then we're not upgrading, we are customizing it. These are our 2 disks. Our drive 0 will be our operating system, and then our drive 1 will be our RAID disk, or just a secondary disk where we can install applications and save data on our file share. And then we'll click next. We can format the drives here, but again, the best thing about it is when I'm creating the virtual machine, the more disks I add, the better. So in this case, I'm going to have 2 disks, and then I'll show you guys how to add another disk, and then drive 1 and 2 will be set up for mirroring, while 0, 1, and 2 will be set up for mirroring, and 0, 1, and 2 will be set up for mirroring using our way-to-1 configuration, okay? So we're just going to hit next, and then we're just going to wait for it to install. So I'm just going to go back to the drawing board and look at our drawing board to see what's going on. So again, we're installing our Windows 2012 R2 operating system on a bare metal machine. So I'm thinking about maybe stop the drawing. So I might want to add another disk, and I'll do that when the machine is off. When the machine is off, we'll add another disk, and we'll use that for mirroring. So you'll have 0, 1, and 2. It's a little bit skinnier here. So 0, 1, and 2. So 0 will have our operating system, and then this will be our 2 extra drives to have, and then we'll create a RAID configuration with these 2 disks here. Okay, so we talked about thin provisioning. We talked about thick provisioning, which is important. We talked about processors. Typically, by default, you have physically 1 socket per processor, and the number of cores per processor is basically dividing it into 2 cores, and each core will act as an independent processor. So we've added in our disk, we've added, if we go back to our settings, we've added number of 2 processors and 1 core per processor. Okay. Let's go back to our. So again, 4 cores is 4 portions of a physical chip, and then you also have, again, you can have as many cores as you want. You can have 2, 4, 8, 16 to 32 processors, up to 32. So minimum 2, up to 32 cores. And now we will talk about, this is a future topic. We can talk about networking. So this is very important when it comes to Hyper-V. So what is a network? So a network is a computer or device that's interconnected and can communicate and share resources in a system. A network also allows for the exchange of data and collaborates across a LAN or WAN environment from a geographical standpoint. And what I mean is it allows the exchange of that data and collaborates across either a local area network or a wide area network environment from point A to point B in the geographical map. So just to make sure that we know that a network um, is is something that we need, either a device or any computer, and one or two computers that are interconnected, and that we can communicate and share resources in that system. So that's what a network is. Just make note of that because that is important when we talk about network. Another thing we also want to make sure is we understand in a networking aspect is what is an IP address. So IP is an internet protocol. It's a unique identifier which gets assigned to a device connected to the network, right? So it is important that unique identifier is a number, uh, right? It's gets assigned. It's just a number with dots in between that gets assigned um, with it gets assigned to a computer on a network card and allows that device to get connected to the network. So it is unique for each machine that's connected to it. Um, so it could be unique as a permanent IP, or it could be a dynamically or automatically assigned number. So when you're enabling two devices in an IP internet protocol address, those two devices need to communicate with each other. So you have your source um, and destination. So understand that you need two devices to communicate. So it's bidirectional or unidirectional. It's got to be bidirectional. It's got to you have your source and your destination. There are two types of internet protocol addresses, and either an IPv4 or an IPv6. I also have some, you know, some information about that, which is what I'm going to post. So it's just going to be a good read. Um, and then also have the organization that administers the internet. I'll show you what that looks like. And again, IPv4 um, is Internet Protocol version 4, which is the fourth version of Internet protocols. It's just an IP, it's just an addressing system that's used by many of us or administrators to identify any or all the devices on the network. Okay, so please make note of that because that is important. Because that's also good to know on the test, on the exams. This was heavily used in the 7740 exam. But again, when you're going in for an interview or job interview, you want to make sure that you're constantly, you know, take note of this so that you have this in the back of your mind, especially when the interview asks you, or the manager on duty asks you, or the person interviewing you asks you throughout your interview. Um, so this is important. I'm going to copy this and I want to open this up. I want to open the link. So understanding the TCP/IP addressing and subnetting basics. If you want to read some more about what IP addressing is, uh, you know, it's all here. How they're normally expressed in dotted decimal format. So there's a decimal format in between the 4 octets. I'll explain what that means. So to understand how subnet masks are used to distinguish between the host networks and subnetworks, examine an IP address in binary notation. Okay, so for example, you have a dotted decimal IP, 192 dot decimal uh, uh, octet number, and then 168, 123, 132. Again, that's a binary notation, and that 32-bit number um, is basically turned into ones and zeros. This number may be hard to make sense of, but again, if you divide this into 4 parts of 8 bytes, it should get a better picture of what that number looks like, okay? So those 8-bit sections are known as octets, like I mentioned before. The example IP address then becomes, again, dividing it by 8, sort of what you see in blue, 10000, followed by 6 zeros. And those 8 bits are basically 2 to the power 8, 2 to the power 7 from left to right. So 2 to the power of 8, 2 to the power of 7, 2 to the power 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and so forth. So in this instance, you have 2 to the power of 8, which is 128, right? So 2 to the power of 8. So 2 times 8 times, right? And get a scientific, it would be, see if I can get the scientific here. So if I get 2 to the power of 8, that'd be 256, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 2 to the power of 7, my apologies. 2 to the power of 7. Let's cancel that equation. It's 2 to the power 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So 2 to the power of 7. 2 to the power of 7, right? Plus, so 128 plus 2 to the power of 6. So 2 to the power of 6 equals, so 64 plus 128 equals, and that'll give us our first subnet. Okay, you understand where I'm going with this, guys? It's pretty straightforward. This number only makes sense, a little more sense for most uses, but converting the binary just as into dotted decimal format is the way to go, especially you know, when the decimal numbers are separated by periods, and those octets are converted from binary to decimal notations. So for anybody who's a CCNA enthusiast, you guys can skip this part. So for TCP/IP wide area networks and so forth, you can read that later. This again is a good read. For this process to work, the IP address has 2 parts. The first part of the address is used for a network address, then the last for the host. So you have your networks and hosts. So 132 acts as the host, right? Dot 132 is the network, and then the host is 192.168.123. So the first 3 octets are the host, and the 0.0.0.132 is the network. Let me read that. Let me see if I read that properly. So now in this IP address, 192.168.123 network 132 host, or 192.168.123.0 is the network address. And then, okay. So the host is that, and then the network address is this. Oh, sorry. This is the network address, and the host is the last byte. That's the host address. So those are all the hosts. So you have 132 hosts, and that machine is connected to that host. So that's our host address. Sorry about that. So in this instance here, this will kind of cut it down. So this is the network address, right? 0, right? With a network address or subnet, and then a CIRD, and then your host address is the 132. Okay. You can look at the network classes, and again, network classes are by internet, and this is important as well too to know what that is. So this is our public information regarding internet domain name registry services. So this is where we would get our IP information or registry information or any information that you want to know in terms of spam or viruses, inaccurate, who is information, name, trademarks, et cetera, et cetera. You can also look at domain transfer disputes and understand the about the domain name transfers, which is sponsored by ICANN, and learn more, take action based on the authentication code, transfer a new register, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so take a look at this, read into this. get yourself familiar with this because this is important in understanding what I'm doing. So if you don't understand, you know, read up on these the documentation. I'll send you guys some information on that, and you'll have the video to look back. Okay. We also have something called private IP address. Those are IPv4 classes. Those are divided into three classes: your A, B, and C. So you have your 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.255.255-8, and then you have your 172.116.0.0 to 172. And I think I mentioned this in a previous video, so this should be in a previous video if I'm not mistaken, with a CRD of 12. And then you have your 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255, and this has a CRD of 16. So these private IP ranges are reserved for the use in your private network, so sort of what we're doing, or LAN network environments. So this is where you'll note a lot of internal private ranges are set up this way. So this is what we're going to be using. So private IPs are not routable on the public internet, so they won't be able to be routed on the public internet, and they work well with NAT. So this will give you access to the internet. They allow devices on a private network to communicate with devices on a public network. Okay. Public IP addresses are a little bit different. So we talked about private in the last slide. In our next slide, we're talking about IP addresses. These ranges are unique and just used for public internet alone. Okay. Public IPs are assigned by ISP. Right? And ISP is obviously your internet service provider. Okay, so whoever your internet service provider is, if you guys don't know what an ISP is, I will give you some examples of what ISPs are. So ISP examples in Canada and US. So these are some basic, most popular ISPs. Obviously, vMedia, Bell, Rogers, Shaw. Uh, these are some companies that are huge ISPs, big ISPs, and these are the top. TELUS, and we also have, and we can do spell checks. We can do checks on these: Freedom Mobile, GTD Communications, et cetera, et cetera. And then we also have ISPs in the US. Right? So those are that's a good read for that. Those are our ISPs. And then we also have ISP examples in United States. Right? And like Verizon Wireless, Comcast, Spectrum, Cox Communication, which is a big, Google Fiber, AT&T, which is also big, and Frontier. These are some of them. There's some more, obviously. If you guys are, for the people that are in America, there's Viasat, Consolidated Communications, T-Mobile, TDS Earthlink, Ziply Fiber, and other ISPs. So those are some examples of ISPs in the US, which will provide internet service to you. Picture, and we'll put that picture here for the state, and then I will also post the Canadian samples in Canada, and then pull up the Wikipedia. So here's a list of some providers in Canada that are, around different provinces like Saskatchewan, uh, Ontario, so whatever province you're in, um, you know, will give us this information, and this will tell us uh, where that is. Okay, so also put that in our notes. Okay, I want you guys to, it's a good read to take a look at. I'll also post that in our notes. We also have, again, 3 classes. Actually, there's 5 classes of IP ranges, starting off with class A. Those 5 ranges, again, are A, B, C, D, E, based on their first octet. That's our class A. Remember, the first 3 bits of the address in the first might determine its class. So if you're looking at a class A, our example starts from 0.0.0.0 to -127. That's our class A, or 10.0.0.1 or 12.0.0.1. Okay. One can be a private, one can be a public. There's also assignments. Here's a link for you guys to take a look at when you have some time. Right click and I will open the link. Let's open the link. So here's our IPv4 IANA space registry, which will give us our IPs. So we're looking from 0 to 127. So 127 stops here, and that's actually our loopback address, 127, and that's reserved. The rest of these are allocated to specific or legacy to specific designates. This will give you all the information you need. We also have the 10, which is a private use for public IPs, like I mentioned. And then, so that's sort of where that information comes from. So take a look at that when you have some chance to understand the different IPs and what these IPs are used for. So for example, DoD Intel information, these are legacy IP addresses. Bell Laboratories, Apple computers use, 17/8 IP addresses, Class A. So they use that. They own that. And then there's some allocated ones: IRIN, RIPE, NCC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Here are the footnotes. If you have any questions regard to that, these are footnoted. And we could take a look at that if we need to find out some information from these footnotes, or if you have any questions regarding these specific IP addresses. Let's go back to our machine, see how that's going so far. Okay, so we're creating our administrator. All right, so let me finish up here, and then I'll give my administrator the password, and then we'll set up auto login so that we don't have to log in each time. Actually, you know what? Let's just do that now. I'll show you how to do that now. Auto login, which is a great feature, not used, but it's a feature that's part of the Workstation Pro and kind of automates it for kiosk machines, which is kind of cool and gives it that. Oh, password. And once I put my password, it matches. I hit enter, and that'll finalize it. So I'm able to, before I sign in, I want to add auto login. Auto login, class A, just talked about. Auto login is going to be part of our nested virtualization. And again, our bare metal and our Hyper-V VMs will be nested within our bare metal machine. So that's sort of what nested virtualization is. We'll have that auto login. So we will, let's give it auto login. And I'll show you. And that's in settings of VMware Workstation Pro. And I can actually Pro. So if I go to the options here and I click on that, I see that it's not available yet. To configure that, I need to make sure that it's the guest OS is running and that an update version of VMware Tools is running. So I'm going to install VMware Tools first, and then install VMware tools, and that'll give us the ability to move the mouse and give it the auto stretch and display it a little bit better. VMware tools is done through the bare metal machine itself. It's already preloaded. We don't have to load anything. VMware Workstation Pro has it for us, and in other videos I showed you how to do that. So it's pretty straightforward. So what we'll do is we will log in and then install that. So with our administrative password, right, on our Windows 2012 server data center with 2 network cards. And if you could see, like, our kind of our display looks a little bit mumbled and not stretching properly. It's shrunk. Um, so we're going to fix that. So we right click here on our machine, install VMware tools. And tap on that VMware tools and run the setup. And then in the meantime, I can also call it and disable updates. So this is our computer name. We can change this computer name, this long win /. This is done by default on a bare metal machine. We want to change that. So how do we do that? We right now it's known as a work group. So work group machine. We want to make it a member machine. That's a standalone machine or a standalone server. There's 3 different types. There's a work group machine, which is just a work group machine, regular laptop, bare metal machine, with not connected to the domain. Just is there as is. We also have our domain controllers, and those are our different servers that we right. Then we have our 4 different servers. So we have our work group machines, and then we have our 4 different types of servers. So we have our domain controllers, where we're connecting to the domain. Becomes our hybrid joined machine, a domain joined machine. Sorry, not hybrid, or domain joined machine. It's not hybrid yet, or intra joined, or Active Directory. It'll add it to our Active Directory once it's communicates on the same VNet. So we'd have to create a DC for that in order for it to read up on. So let me get back to my drawings here. So our machine here, in order for this machine to communicate or join the machine, you would need a domain controller. So you'd have to create a separate domain controller, right? And then that DC, that's our DC, and then this would have to be under the same VNet. So this has to communicate with that type of thing. So it has to communicate with each other. In order to communicate with that, you need to add it to the same VM network, which is what we haven't done in this instance, and I'm not going to do because I'll set that up in another video. But sort of understand where this is coming from, so you guys have an understanding of what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to stop drawing. Okay, so our machine is going to be a work group machine. So basically, there's 4 different types. We have a domain controllers, right? We have our member servers. So our member servers are used, not meant to be a DC, but they're used for enterprise applications. Then we have our standalone servers. So as of now, these will be standalone servers, which are not joined to any CA or central authority. So basically, because we didn't install our DC yet, like, you need a DC. You would need a DC and a member server in order for it to be a standalone. So it doesn't need to be part or joined to any central authority. And then we also have our client machines, which is our laptops. our client machines, which is our NOS or networking operating system machines that have Windows 7, 8, or 10, professional, ultimate, or business, Windows 10 or Windows 11. Sorry, Windows 8, Windows 7 no longer exists. But if you do have a Windows 7, those type of machines, those client machines will have that, or Windows 10 or Windows 11 machine. So in this instance, we will be sticking with a standalone server for this testing purposes. You're more than welcome to add a DC and add the roles, but in this case, right now, as it stands, it's a standalone server, bare metal machine. Okay, it's not joined to any central authority or domain. Okay, pretty straightforward, not hard at all. So I'm going to change the machine name, and again, how to do that? You click that, or you can, go to start this PC, right click, right? And then properties. Oh, sorry, this PC. Right click on this PC and properties, right? And then change settings. That's one way to do it. Or you can do it through the server manager, but in this case, because it's a server, we're going to do it through the server manager. You can also run sysdm.cpl. I want you guys to make note of that because I am going to be using that a lot. Hopefully you guys are using that. That's a good tip. So yeah, so that's one way to do it. Then we have our second way to do it, right? Which is through the system properties or sysdm. Oh, sysdm.cpl. Hit OK, and that'll open up the system properties as such. Okay. This will also have your user profiles set up and whatnot, and performance settings and start and environment variables if you need to make changes with that. So let's go back to the computer name and make the change. So this computer, we're going to call it SC um, uh, Windows 2012 Canada DC data center with Hyper-V installed. V roll. So that's going to be our Windows 2012 server. Server SRV can DC/vibe. Again, it doesn't have to be that long, but just so you get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. And then again, if you want to join it to the domain, you're more than welcome to join it to the domain. Just make sure that your networking protocols and your IP addresses are set up. You have your DHCP is set up, or you have your on your DC, or you have the specific networking such as DNS installed. And I'll show you guys how to do that as well too. We are going to install those roles, but for now, we're just going to go step by step and go from there. So hit OK. See, so the net limit is 15 bytes, which is 15 characters in length. Okay, so we can actually shorten this. All right, and we'll shorten this to 15. So right now we have 5. All right. We'll change that to 549. Just take that out. I just call it the server. So 5, 10. Let's do Canada DC/Hyper-V. Okay, we'll do that. Note that your computer name, I'll write that down too. So, change computer name on server, and we call that SC server Canada domain controller, and then hyper V. And I showed you the 3 ways how to do that and different ways how to change it. Note the computer name can only be 15 bytes. 15 bytes long, 15 bytes in size, or 15 characters in length, as we saw. Okay. Please make note when you're creating these. You're making. You can also remove the dashes if you want, but again, that's up to you. Okay. Your IP. So this will come after. Let's you know. Character, and then add a static IP. So we're giving it some character right now. We're installing the tools, and I'll show you how to do the auto login process, which is sort of something that a cool tip for you guys who don't want to always log in each time. It's good for kiosk machines or servers that are always in. Uh, Again, just be aware of that and how to use it and when not to use it. So this has an auto login feature. I showed you guys how to use that in M Remote in my other class. So you know, this option here, we can also use that. So good idea. If for any of you guys wanting to try that out, you're more than welcome to try that out. Okay. Our next feature is, okay, so I'm going to reset that. Okay, make the changes to that. So I'm going to restart that now for the VMware tools, and so that we can change the name. Let's see what else. Oh, we're going to turn on IE configure, enhanced configuration. We'll turn that off, 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 hit OK, right? And then give it the time zone, product ID, and disable IPv6. So I'm going to disable IPv6. So I'm going to right click on that and disable, right? And then hit OK, and then disable IPv6 properties, disable IPv6 since we're not using it, hit OK on both network cards. There's NIC teaming. I'm also going to talk about that. And then install updates. Okay, so we haven't configured the install updates. We don't really have to configure that, but we can configure it if we want through command prompt. I don't know if, yeah, why not? Let's try to configure that. All right. Because in a production environment, we're going to have our updates managed by our IT. So there's an application called sconfig. And this is where we can kind of, you know, make those changes within sconfig. So right now, our update settings are set to manual. So if we click 5, we can make changes to that, right? Select automatic or manual updates. So Windows Update is currently set to manual. We can either turn that on or turn that off based on whatever you want, or automatic. Well, in this case, we're gonna select keep it manual. Then we also have our time and dates. So we're gonna exit, type in exit, right? And then check our time and date. So we'll select the number 9. Our time and date, just make sure our time and dates are ready. Make sure, so by default, sometimes our versioning is set to India or set to the US or set to Europe or China or Russia or South America. Just make sure that your time and date stamps are configured to your installation of the Windows Server 2012. And that'll kind of, if you did miss it, you can make the changes here, or just click on it. So that's how we do that. We don't need to check for anything. Customer not participating in that, and then we're signing those by NAT because our IPs are not configured yet to static. So right now they're assigning to DHCPs. We will install those roles in a second, but I want to reset the machine first. So I'm going to let this machine reset before we install. Oh, let's install this first. So let's install that. So sconfig. Six, since we don't need it. And then I'm going to create a snapshot. Create a snapshot of the machine, of the VM, before I move on. And then after that, we'll talk about this. This is our next step. Okay. Okay, so all right, so okay. Restart the VM, and then we'll create a snapshot. Okay, so that's done. Yes. Oh, then we'll show you the shared network drives over there too. So show you guys that once I log in. Control Delete. Enter in your password. So another thing I want to note is the roles that I'm going to want to install. If I can lock this, lock, okay. So there we go. So I want to install roles here. So we've gone ahead and completed this Windows 12 on our machine. And I want to install the roles. So the roles are like I mentioned before. Let's see what roles I want to. We're going to give it specific. Thing here written down. Okay, so the roles we may install ADDS. But again, I don't know. This could be optional just for this one here. You don't really need it. I'm just gonna put this as optional, or our set tools. You don't really need it. My main goal is to set up DNS and DHCP for this lab, and then install Hyper-V role, and then talk about the logic in between that and what the logic does and whatnot. But for now, I want to get you guys to understand while we installed this already. We tested that. Um, we have that. So let's add the auto login first, and then install the roles, and then install the IPs and then the roles itself. So that's set up and everything. So we'll go to options, go to auto login, and we are going to enable that. And we're going to put our username. So that automatically logs in once it starts. Hit OK. So I'm going to be logging as administrator for this machine. And again, I can disable this or change the user at any time. Okay. We can also check and take a look at hit OK for that. And then we can look for computer management. And then within our local users and groups, we have our administrator, or we can create a specific copy of this machine and set the password as is. So we're going to be logging as an administrator from now on. Okay, and then we are going to all right, so made those changes to that, and I'm going to restart the computer and see if for planned, and then hit OK. Let's see if it automates it. It logs in automatically with that password. There you go. So that automatically signed in without having us to sign in, which is kind of cool feature. Oh, and then another thing I want to add too is the power options. So our servers, remember our servers need to be on at all times. Sometimes you may want to keep it on, but there is a power option, and that is a great feature. It's a pretty cool feature. One of my top favorites. Let's go the roles. Okay, that's an optional role. Okay, so I'm going to add power management. All right, and turn off. Power. Okay. All right, so let's go to desktop. Right click, go to power options. Choose what when I turn off the lid, I want to turn that to never, and then save those changes. Okay, that's it. That's all you have to do. It's pretty straightforward. Everything else is self-explanatory, and those power settings are going to continue to turn it on. So now, again, auto login works. Perfect. Yay. We finally got it to work. It's a great feature. If you guys want to use it, you're more than welcome to use it. I think for now, I think for now is create the snapshot, and then we'll start off, and then we'll continue off with the classes next time. So our next class, my next video, I want to talk about class A through E. I'm going to talk about DNS, and I'm going to install those DNS roles, and I'm going to give it the static IP address, and talk about nested virtual environment and install the Hyper-V role within it, and show you the bits and bytes of how Hyper-V works, and it's all going to be in our next session. Okay, guys. Well, I just want to thank you guys again for your time. I'm going to stop it for here. It's been a lot of we're over the 1 hour and 45-minute mark. I've been talking. I've been giving you guys a lot of information. This is great information, and I will see you guys next time in part 5.2. So thank you for joining. I hope this session was informative. Hit that like and subscribe button, please, and add yourself to the WhatsApp group if you have any questions.